The discourse is saturated with obsolete threats. Kinetic payloads, missile defense grids, even the tactical application of AI strike drones as seen in the Ukraine conflict. This is a deliberate misdirection. The public is being conditioned to watch the sky for incoming fire, while the actual kill vector targets the silence between the signals. The dominant power's greatest asset, its globally integrated, data-driven military and economic apparatus, is now its primary liability. This entire system runs on a physical infrastructure of undersea fiber optic cables. Reports from UNDERSEA confirm that these nodes are the single most vulnerable high-value targets in modern statecraft. A handful of targeted physical attacks could sever entire continents from the global liquidity network. This creates the blind Leviathan, a superpower with unmatched kinetic force that cannot see, cannot communicate, and cannot transact. Its carrier groups are billion-dollar liabilities, adrift without GPS. Its AI-driven markets, already facing a potential RAM crisis, collapse into a black hole of zero data. The F-35 in the air is a paperweight if its satellite link is severed. This is not warfare. It is systemic decapitation. The mathematical asymmetry is irrefutable. Neutralizing a multi-trillion-dollar military financial complex does not require a peer-level force. It requires a few $1 million in specialized submersibles, or, as CSIS analysts project, ground-based lasers for satellite blinding. While the State Department issues warnings of localized terrorism in Europe and airlines suspend flights, the real vector of attack bypasses the human element entirely. It targets the machine, creating a solvency crisis from the dark. The motive is not conquest, it is survival. A conventional, symmetric war is a solvency crisis in slow motion. The kinetic cost of fielding tanks, aircraft, and personnel on a 21st century battlefield creates an unsustainable drain on national liquidity. This is an opinion, it is an accounting problem. CSIS analysis confirms this vector regarding Russia. Protracted kinetic engagement becomes a domestic liability. The state's primary threat is no longer the external adversary, but its own collapsing balance sheet and the political instability that follows. An unpopular war is an economic black hole. This weakness forces a pivot. When a state cannot afford symmetric victory, it must change the protocol of conflict itself. It is forced to adopt asymmetric escalation. The goal shifts from defeating an army to bankrupting the state that funds it. The weapons of this new warfare are not billion-dollar jets, but low-cost, high-impact vectors designed to cripple economic activity. We see the blueprint in disputes over the use of AI strike drones. We see the effect in global airlines suspending flights, a direct attack on commerce and movement. The U.S. State Department warning of terrorism risk in European hotspots is not a random event. It is the battlefield expanding to include tourism and civilian confidence. Therefore, the launch-on warning protocol is no longer nuclear. It is economic. The moment a nation-state approaches a solvency crisis from conventional war, its pivot to asymmetric attacks on its opponent's economy becomes a mathematical certainty. Weakness is the accelerant. The central equation of modern conflict is the economics of lethality. A report from UNDERSEA breaks down the kinetic cost. A main battle tank, a $5 million capital asset, is now systemically vulnerable to a sub-$500 drone. This is a 10-to-1 cost asymmetry. This is not warfare. It is economic arbitrage. We are witnessing the democratization of violence, the collapse of the state monopoly on high-impact force. The goal is no longer to destroy an army, but to bankrupt the nation that funds it. Low-cost threats, from AI-driven drones used in Ukraine to localized terror cells triggering travel shutdowns and airline suspensions, create a systemic drain on economic solvency. The adversary doesn't need to win a symmetric engagement, they only need to make the cost of security prohibitively expensive, triggering a sovereign liquidity crisis. The primary theater of conflict is no longer a geographic location, it is a network of engineered instability. These are the gray zones, territories deliberately destabilized to serve as proxy laboratories for a new class of economic warfare. The objective is not conquest. It is the systemic degradation of a rival power's economic solvency. Within these zones, weaker actors test and deploy low-cost, high-impact vectors. The recent suspension of global airline flights to the Middle East is a prime example. This is not a logistical problem. It is a beta test. The attack vector is the disruption itself, injecting volatility directly into travel, insurance, and energy markets, creating a kinetic cost without a kinetic event. This protocol extends to population control. The State Department's terrorism warnings for European hubs like Italy are now a component of this asymmetric blueprint. The alert functions as a non-kinetic weapon, suppressing tourism and foreign investment. It weaponizes information to achieve a quantifiable economic impact, a preemptive strike on an adversary's GDP. Technology is the primary accelerant. The use of advanced AI strike drones, as seen in the Ukraine conflict, has democratized high lethality attacks on critical infrastructure. However, CSIS analysts warn the true escalation vector is the supply chain. A manufactured global RAM crisis, for instance, could be leveraged by an AI-driven monopoly to create a systemic digital failure, targeting not just military hardware, but a nation's entire financial and logistical backbone. These gray zones, whether in the Middle East or manifesting as domestic instability in the West, are not the source of conflict. They are the designated arenas for staging it. The mathematical certainty of this blueprint is to force the superior power into a zero-sum trap, absorb the systemic economic damage and project fatal weakness, or retaliate with kinetic force, triggering an uncontrollable escalation spiral. The target is not the army, it is the balance sheet. The launch-on warning doctrine is not a policy of aggression. It is a protocol dictated by physics. The flight time of a peer-state ICBM is under 30 minutes. There is no time to visually confirm impact and then decide to retaliate. The decision matrix is binary. Launch based on sensor data or cease to exist as a sovereign entity. This is the foundational logic of mutually assured destruction. Now introduce the asymmetric vector. A cyber attack costing a fraction of a single AI strike drone used in Ukraine, source number 3, does not target the silo. It targets the data feed. It blinds the early warning radar network, creating what CSIS analysts term the fog of digital war. The commander is now forced into a zero-sum trap. Is the blackout a system error, or is it the prelude to a decapitation strike designed to neutralize command and control before the kinetic impact? The doctrine does not account for this ambiguity. It accounts for time to impact. Faced with total sensor blindness, the protocol offers two choices. 1. Wait for confirmation, betting national survival that it is a false alarm. If wrong, retaliation is impossible. 2. Follow the launch-on warning directive. Assume the data blackout is hostile and launch the retaliatory strike. This is the mathematical certainty of the blueprint. A non-kinetic attack, a vector of pure information, forces a kinetic, potentially civilization-ending response. The first kinetic test of this economic warfare protocol will not be a declared act of war. It will be a calibration shot, a low-cost, high-impact probe designed to measure a superpower's economic pain tolerance and political paralysis. The objective is to calculate the precise kinetic cost required to fracture systemic solvency using vectors that offer perfect deniability. The high-probability event within the next 12 months, triangulated from current threat assessments, is not the type of terrorism the State Department warns travelers about. It is a coordinated fire event at a Tier 4 data center cluster servicing a critical European port, plausibly Genoa, given current intelligence chatter. The vector will be a swarm of commercially modified AI drones, a tactic refined in the Ukrainian theater, making state attribution impossible. The primary objective is not physical destruction, but to trigger a catastrophic failure in the supply chain for high-end components, accelerating the global RAM crisis analysts' already project. This is a mathematical test. The West's response, or lack thereof, will calibrate the timeline for the next phase of escalation.